Welcome to Happy Times and Places, a positively inclined Doctor Who episode commentary podcast in which I, Toby Haydock, watch a Doctor Who story chosen by a friend of mine. I drop in facts and observations and thoughts, and I try to guess what my special guest's favourite thing about each instalment might be.
Hello there, Toby. This is Martin calling. Martin Holmes, the podcast guy. For this week's edition, I would very much like for you to watch all 4 episodes of The 10th Planet, which, as I'm sure everybody listening already knows, features William Hartnell's final regular appearance as the Doctor, and was first broadcast in October 1966.
Well, I hope this old podcast of mine isn't wearing a bit thin. We're nearly up to 100 episodes of stories covered in Happy Times and Places, and we're on a landmark, and we're on the landmark of the landmark. We're on the final episode of The 10th Planet, the last episode to feature William Hartnell as the star of the show, although he does return, albeit on a monitor screen, in the Three Doctors, and also the episode that for many, many years was considered, or at least portrayed in such media as covered such things, as the episode that all Doctor Who fans wanted back more than any. Of course, being a contrary little beggar, I've always been... No, I would much rather a single instalment from a totally missing story would come back, because I've never seen the need to complete... it's like when I see people say, I want the 2 from the Invasion and the 2 from the Ice Warriors, because that would complete the stories. Well, we know what happens in the stories. It's odd, isn't it? But I can see the absolute sense in that, because people want to watch stories all the way through and enjoy the stories as were. But I've always got an eye to the archaeology, I suppose, and because I know what happens in the stories, I don't care, and I'm not going to be showing them to anybody else, so I don't need to explain the gaps. So. But it's perfectly logical why people would want stories complete. But no, that is not my priority. However, as I've been doing this, and maybe as I've got a bit more recently, I've been thinking, well, is it time to revisit my childhood prejudices and go, well, actually, no, 10th Planet 4 would be, of course it would be an important addition, because it's vital to... at least have the bookends of the Hartnell era, and it is a shame of all the episodes to be missing. It's the last one, and how that came to be missing, but we've got the first 3 is so odd. Yes, I know we've got orphaned episodes, I know we've got incomplete stories, but of all the episodes to be missing from the 10th Planet, it's the last one. And yet the vital part of it that we really need for clip shows and the like does exist. Now, does the fact that the clip from 10th Planet Part 4 of the Regeneration went into Blue Peter, there was long a rumour, wasn't there, that it was borrowed by Blue Peter to take the Regeneration out of it and never returned. That has since been poo-pooed, but it may have an element of truth in it. I don't know. It sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? The Missing Episodes podcast, though, is your place to go for informed speculation about that. I'm just giving you the journey that I went through. I remember reading that as a thing and thinking, oh, that sounds plausible. But then it has been dismissed since. But it's always lingered, much like the Colour 10th Planet, and the fact that Episode 4 was returned to make the Colour 10th Planet, which was an April Fool. So there's so much about the 10th Planet Part 4 that is not actually about the contents of the episode itself. So it's nice that the nature of this podcast is that we actually have to watch and go through the action of the episode, which I have to say, the last time I did it, which was running through corridors many, many years ago, I'd found it quite surprising in context, the nature of the story. I have to say, I have rewatched it today already. I've gone against what I said in previous episodes. I watched the animation today for homework, but I'm actually going to watch along to the VHS reconstruction when I do the commentary, in order that I don't get distracted by moving sketches. I just think it feels purer And I'll do podcasts, I'm sure, in the future about the animations and the contents thereof. But I'm just trying to get to the episodes really, and not any sort of modern interpretations. Faithful though the animation was, and I thought they did a very good job. It's an effective stab. The 10th Planet Part 4 animation. Anyway, we have a number of people who have written in. I instructed patrons to talk not only about episode 3 but also about episode 4, because obviously anything they have to say after listening to this broadcast would not find itself into a podcast, because obviously in my next Happy Times and Places I will be talking about a different story completely. So Siobhan Galichon, who is sometimes William Hartnell, don't you know, says we can go no further without mentioning the ogron in the room. Martin, this is Martin Holmes, our special guest, is responsible for pictorially detailing the history of Gruntley the Ogron, famous for his catchphrase, "It me." Thanks to him, we know about Lovely Joe, Davros and Nida, Adric and the evil Third Doctor's day-to-day life in the bunker on Skaro. Both Martin and Gruntley can be found on Blue Sky, and I wholeheartedly recommend a follow. I concur. I've always championed Gruntley the Ogron, who never fails to put a smile on my face. And if you don't know what I mean, Gruntley is spelled Gruntliegh. You just check out Gruntley the Ogron. Lots of fun. Also, says Siobhan, 10th Planet Cybermen are the best Cybermen. So there. Well, I do love the 10th Planet Cybermen. They're very, very good. So there's no need for a so there. But my favourites are the Invasion. Frank Shale says the only jumper. Oh, God, Jumper Gate. There's more jumper. There's more jumper action here. The only jumper I really remember from the 60s is Stephen's famous striped polo neck from the Celestial Toymaker. But as you correctly point out, polo necks don't really count if Ben can wear one under his V-neck. Yeah, because they're not like a sort of chunky jumper, are they? They're called roll neck sweaters. Is that the same? Is a roll neck the same as a polo neck? What's a turtleneck? I'm useless at fashion, says Frank. Yeah, I mean, I think when the jumper can of worms was opened, it meant a sort of knitted woolly jumper rather than. But I would totally understand anyone that went, I think you'll find a polo neck is a kind of jumper. It's just in a different subsection. A guy says all will become irrelevant when Cybermen invade, trying to get us out of this jumper conundrum. Then Frank says, you will wear your jersey on your face. That's very true. Andrew Llewellyn says, I've just been watching An Unearthly Child, and the boy sitting next to Susan in the science lab wears a V-neck jumper with shirt and tie in both the pilot and the transmitted versions. Agreed he's not a speaking part, but that must be the first jumper in the programme, surely. But Frank has added schoolwork / clothes. So school clothes count as work clothes, so do they count as jumpers? It's not an optional jumper. Barclay has chosen to wear a jumper. The schoolboy, played by Brian Thomas, don't you know? It's mad that I can identify the actor, but I hadn't invoked his jumper up until now. Never write in about clothes ever again, please, anybody. But yeah, well, and Frank adds to this, of course, just a thought, do cricket jumpers count? Because there were cricketers in the Daleks' master plan when the TARDIS briefly drops in and interrupts play. I would say that counts more as a uniform, though. Sportswear, this is what Frank says, but sportswear isn't really a comfy sweater for relaxing in, even if it was trendy to do so. Hartnell wears a cricket or tennis top under his jacket in the famous Verity Has a Drink with a TARDIS team publicity photo. Yeah, people who played cricket did sometimes wear a cricket jumper not to play cricket in, but these cricketers in Doctor Who were playing cricket when they were in Doctor Who, so therefore that counts as cricket clothes rather than a jumper in and of itself. Christ. I suspect cricket jumpers would fall under the same category as the ship captain's jumper. Work uniforms. We need to create subcategories, says Guy. Oh, please, God, no. Trevor Smith says, love this episode and very much looking forward to episode 4 because it is very special to me as it was broadcast on my 6th birthday and is, along with Image of the Fendal Part 1, one of the only 2 episodes to be broadcast on my birthday. Hurrah! Well, happy 10th Planet birthday, Trevor. Jason Thompson says, henceforth I shall introduce myself as Jason Thompson, instigator of Jumpergate. Yes, you shall, Jason, you shall. So Guy Lambert and Frank Shell's back again, the Bernstein and Woodward of Jumpergate. So basically this story is about jumpers, right, says Guy. And Frank says there is far too little attention paid to the importance of knitwear in Doctor Who. All we hear about is the ruddy scarf. Frank is back again to say what to say about episode 4. Finally, Frank has stopped spinning his knitwear yarn and is now going to talk about the yarn itself, the story. What about episode 4, says Frank. The regeneration in the novelisation disappointed me slightly. The second Doctor pops out of a kind of concentrated sleep machine, which seemed like a sealed casket, Zero Cabinet style. So Ben and Polly didn't see him change, nor did he have the period of erratic behaviour as his senses settled down. He gets up and speaks to them, which makes the Power novelisation an awkward fit. So I was delighted to see in the clip on the Lost in Time DVDs that they do actually see the Doctor out in the open, actually changing his face. They got into the TARDIS just in time. It seems he had second thoughts about locking them out, literally out of the ship and figuratively out of a key point in his life, as he had done with Susan. Such a spooky scene with all the controls going haywire. Still the best regeneration in my book, though I love Logopolis' one too. Jason Thompson says, who's hopefully putting Jumpergate behind him, I did one of Joe Ford's Hamster with a Blunt Penknife commentary podcasts on the power of the Daleks, in which I said I thought there were two key decisions the production team made when changing to Troughton as the Doctor. The first of them being to have him change on screen and in sight of the companions. We all saw him change, so a lot less room for the idea of an imposter. The other, less relevant to this story, was giving Troughton a different personality, so it wasn't just younger Hartnell. Those two choices, I'm sure, are critical to how we still have Doctor Who as an ongoing series to this day. I think you're right, Jason. Lisa and Andrew are on the subject of misspellings on the credits. We were going to mention that Adrian Bishop Laggett on sound, who became president of the Institute of Production Sound. He's very famous in the world of sound, Adrian BL, was credited on the old episode 4 Telesnap Recon, that's what I'm about to watch, as Adrian Bishop Baggett, as if he was some variety of French stick, but it's been corrected on the animated version currently on iPlayer. So we won't mention it after all. Well, you have, Lisa and Andrew. Lovely to hear Martin doing these episodes. A thoroughly decent chap. David Gillespie Pratt says, the cliffhanger to episode 3 is another superb piece of direction. There's a real sense of tension throughout those final scenes with the countdown. Then we have that great shot tracking across the set from Ben and Polly taking in the supporting cast and finishing on that close-up of Cutler. From Ben and Polly taking in the supporting cast and finishing up on that close-up of Cutler. Much better than the camera-scripted version, which was much more static. David, I think, spends most of his days snuggled between the pages of camera scripts, which is why he makes very interesting YouTube videos. David says, 10th Planet episode 4. What more is there to say about this episode? Quite a lot, I think, as despite all the clips, telesnaps, etc., there are still things we can't see. Do we see the Doctor becoming more frail and weak, for example? Hartnell does have some nice moments, especially when making his bargain with the Cybermen, and he's allowed a few last moments of righteous indignation before being carted off to the spaceship. Good grief, says Jason Thompson. What have I started or indeed instigated? I am always slightly distracted by the fact that Gordon Craig's fainting moans sound nothing like Hartnell, which is unfortunate but hardly something to criticise a production team making a rapid change on the fly in an era where they certainly never expected us to be seeing it decades later. This and episode 4 contain a couple of dialogue fluffs that were never mentioned in things like the discontinuity guide. I know what you're going to say, Jason. You're going to say Grotty Plonit Mandos, which is one of the biggest fluffs, courtesy of Michael Craze, because he gets two adjacent words sort of muddled and completely wrong. Which the teen me, says Jason, was absurdly happy to have spotted. Yes, me too. Barclay tells Ben to find the panel marked plug servo leads, but the panel is actually labelled pump servo leads, which makes more sense. David Doddermead may have realised he fluffed it as he was writing, since he writes... David Doddermead may have realised he fluffed it as he was writing, since what he writes look neither like plug nor pump. And I fluffed too there, Jason. It's a fluff pandemic. Then in the next episode, Michael Craze gives us... I hadn't noticed that David Dudmead one, by the way. So that's... you're never too old to be given a new fluff. You're never too old to need a bit of fluffing. Now I'm on the Hamster in the Blood Penknife podcast. Then in the next episode, Michael Craze gives us the wonderful fluff of referring to the planet Mandos. Some delightful vowel switching there. The space nerd in me loves that the last moving pictures of the Hartnell era are, I'm pretty certain, taken from film of the Saturn V first stage test firings of the Apollo program. Those test firings had only been started a year before production, and no Saturn V rocket would be launched until the end of the following year. So this and the Gemini footage from episode 1 make for some very up-to-the-minute stuff from the production team when it comes to the spaceflight elements of the story. That's very interesting. I know nothing about such things, Jason, so thanks for that, stock footage guru Jason Thompson. You're putting your jump, you instigate one jumper conversation, and no matter how many things you put out there about stock footage, you'll always be Jumper Thompson to me. Frank Shale says, I think they said it was Blue Streak, but I might be wrong, and Jason comes back in. Blue Streak is the rocket in the opening shot of episode 1. The engines being fired are not right for those and look much more like F1 engines as used in the Saturn V first stage. It's poor quality film, so hard to identify, but I've seen a lot of that test footage, so I'd bet on it being the SIC stage static test firing. God, it's all got very detailed with the... is this what you came for? The stock footage talk? I like it. Jason Thompson also says, also going to fly the flag for Hartnell episode 4. Everyone says it's a damp squib of an ending for him, but I don't think this is the case. It's interesting, Jason, because I kind of felt this watching it, the animated version this time around. It had lodged in my head that Hartnell was barely in it at all, and actually he gets loads to do, as we'll discover. Anyway, this is what you're saying. His bits in the first half of the episode, says Jason, negotiating with the Cybermen, are great. I think we have become so used to the idea of a regeneration episode focusing heavily on the Doctor, making some big dramatic sacrifice, we forget that was never the intention. This was only supposed to be a way to change the leading man so the show could carry on without Hartnell, and was conceived as an old man renewing himself. In that respect, his old body wearing a bit thin and basically collapsing from exhaustion and dying of old age worked perfectly here. There is a suggestion it's related to Mondas's energy draining, but that's never made explicit. All the guff about regeneration limits and incarnations and the like is years away. Jack Sharp says, not only do we lose the Doctor in this episode, we also lose the Cybermen, with them only making a cameo appearance. It feels very odd. Imagine if the Daleks had taken a week off shortly after their debut. Oh, this is Jack talking about episode 3. Maybe you don't usually wear 2 jumpers, he says. We noticed because of Ben's double up. But to be fair, have you ever been in the coldest place in the world, as the Doctor calls it? That is very true, Jack. 2 jumpers are acceptable in the South Pole. The impression I get from this story is a bit like the waters of Mars. The Doctor seems to know what's destined to happen, with visitors coming from this new planet, and knowing it will all resolve itself, he's just worried him being there will ruin everything. This is history for the Doctor, and you can't rewrite history, unless your lead actor is taken ill. Oh, very nice, Jack. I used to be one of those people who lusted after episode 4, but honestly now I don't. 10th Planet is in the same vein as The Invasion and The Web of Fear, where it's so close to complete that I barely notice the loss. I'd much rather have something like Feast of Stephen, Power 1, or an episode of Marco Polo. You mentioned watching the animation for episode 4. I used to be a bit of a slave to the animations, but recently I've been sticking to the Telesnap recons more, mostly as I like getting as close to the original as possible, seeing those original images and the odd surviving clip, and maybe because I'm one of those miseries who doesn't like the liberties being taken on recent animations. Totally understandable, Jack. And I am going to watch the Telesnap recon, because as you say, it's closer. But I did like the animation of 10th Planet 4. Nick Mellish says, for the longest time I felt that part 4 of the 10th Planet was the okay one to be lost because it's the weakest of the 4 in terms of incident and story, but increasingly I think I'm wrong. There's a lot we can't see, and I bet the direction and performances sell some of the quieter moments on audio. That said, the cine footage lends the regeneration a very eerie quality, which works well. Jason Thompson back again. A complete tangent, he says, and maybe not one to be read out when you get to recording episode 4. I'm reading it out. But regarding the word ejaculating being used in its now dated, according to many dictionaries it seems, context to mean exclaiming, I used the word ejaculated in episode 2, and I haven't heard the end of it, if you're wondering what Jason is talking about. God, you were Jumpergate, Jason, now you're Stock Footage Gate, and now you're ejaculating all over the place. I can remember let's not get into that. I can remember my eyebrows leaping upwards the first time I read The War of the Worlds when I was about 12 years old. As the Martians began their advance, there is a line as the chaotic exodus of panicked people begins that says, his landlady came to the door wrapped in a dressing gown and shawl. Her husband followed, ejaculating. Given the only context I knew that word in, given my then developmental and educational stage, the mental image that line conjured was no doubt somewhat different from the one Mr. Wells intended. Oh, Herbert, well, yes, he'd clearly been on the time lash. Adam Parkin says nowhere near as funny, but that book is where I learned the word scrutinised. Yeah, well, we're all educated in different ways. And Chris Williams says, just watch the animated Part 4 version, which is actually one of the best animated reconstructions. But never mind all the jumper threads, ahem. Is Ben the first person in Doctor Who to use the ancient phrase, where there's life, there's hope? Although the third Doctor conks out before finishing it, let's say he's quoting Ben Jackson. I've got a slight feeling it's something Ian may have said at some point, the kind of thing he would say. It's a pity we don't see Hartnell's last performance inside the cybership, but we are pretty lucky to have the clips we do, thanks to Blue Peter and an Australian fan to whom we owe eternal thanks. Does anyone ever watch this? Stop it at the Doctor leaving the cybership, watch Twice Upon a Time, stop it at the first Doctor leaving the trenches, come back and finish it off? Hats off if you do. I'm sure some people do. And I probably will one day now. That sounds quite exciting. Just for the record, by the way, Ian does not say, well, there's life, there's hope. This is the first example of, while there's life, there's hope, or while there's life, there's still hope, says Ben. But it is also said in episode 2 of The Demons, while there's life, there's hope, says Squire Winstanley. When the Doctor's been frozen by the sort of devilish psychic outburst of cold weather at the end of part 1 of The Demons. In Planet of the Spiders, episode 6, of course, the third Doctor dies before completing the sentence, says where there's life, there's ending on a joke. I mean, it's brilliant, isn't it? And then, funnily enough, in Tom Baker's last episode, Logopolis Part 4, he says, well, there's life, there's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. So isn't that funny that phrase is repeated in, oh my goodness, in the final episodes? This is a complete coincidence. Isn't this funny? I almost didn't bother to find this out, but I thought I'd have a look. Yes, but it's only occurred to me as I'm saying this out loud. 10th Planet Part 4, Spiders 6, Logopolis 4, 3 last episodes of Classic Doctors feature the phrase, while there's life, there's... Isn't that fun? And considering the only other times it appears in the series, in the classic series certainly, but I think in the series as a whole, episode 2 of The Demons, and finally episode 4 of Warriors of the Deep, in which the Doctor says, while there's life, there's also hope, to Commander Vorshak, as he's being asked to use his handprint. So, well, I hope you've enjoyed having help from me, Silurian, in there. And now, shall we actually watch the episode that this podcast is supposed to be about? That is a lot of commentary. We're 20 minutes in, and I haven't started the episode yet. So I'm gonna line up the 10th Planet, episode 4, and I would like you to press play in 3, 2, 1. So yes, the last time that these titles morph onto the screen to herald an episode starring William Hartnell as Doctor, although because of course this is the first episode of the first story recorded for production block 4, he's essentially a guest star, really. Old Hartnell in this episode, you know, he's just popping in to do a turn and hand over. It's funny, isn't it, that seasons start with Planet of Giants and Galaxy 4 and The Smugglers. Although I suppose new seasons don't necessarily start with a boom, do they? Nobody thinks of sort of New Earth or Smith and Jones and things as classics. Buffy never started on a huge episode, did they? It's almost like it's a resetting of the scenes. I always find that line that Polly has, now we have a chance of life, slightly. Annika Wills does her best with it, but it's quite a tricky piece of dialogue. That it's not great writing. But Hartnell has an entrance. Hartnell, having had a week off, gets to enter his final episode with authority, which is nice. And thank goodness for the Australian fan who took the cine footage, which means we get the famous line of, I guess this body of mine is wearing a bit thing. I think there's evidence that he did some of these on repeat showings and had lined up to get particular bits, which is why we get companions leaving and certain bits and bobs. So, but anyway, and they have a certain mystique, don't they? These cine clips, because they have the slightly different pacing and the shadow and they don't look, they're not as good quality, but it means that they're ghostly. They're like silent movies. They are silent movies, but it gives them a sort of hallowed quality. I feel a bit sorry always for Callan Angelo, who plays Terry Cutler, because he's only ever on a monitor screen. Yes, there's another bit of Hartnell there. So Cutler is becoming, progressively more loony. He chews the scenery quite a lot this episode, General Cutler, and that is because he loses his son, and look at the look on his face on the telesnap. He's looking a bit unhappy. I'm never sure. I watched this afternoon, as I say. The Cybermen spaceship has kind of just landed, so the way that they marched in episode 1 rather slowly across the snow to kill Tito and the American sergeant and then disguise themselves, I think they must leg it from the ship this time, because I mean they've literally only just landed. They must be in record time to come over here in order to save the Doctor's life. That's not obviously why they do it, but their timely intervention to kill the main guest star 3.5 minutes into the episode. So I suspect Robert Beatty spent most of his time at home this week, or putting his feet up. I hope he brought a good book with him. And the Cybermen actors are swap around. So the lead Cyberman last time, Crail, Reg Whitehead, is now one of the lesser Cybermen, and Harry Brooks is playing Krang, who's the main Cyberman, and then Greg Palmer plays the one, I think, who invades Wignus Sanctum. So each of the three cyber actors gets a sort of dialogue, a dialogue heavy part, which is quite nice. Oh, a bit more of Hartnell in his last episode, which is very nice. Well done, unknown Australian fan, who I think chose not to be named. But yes, and I'm sure David Gillespie Pratt reminded me, I think I said when I was chuntering away, nobody says, my name is Crail, but Krang is referred to in this episode, isn't he? One of his factotums calls him Ragus Krang. Now, is Ragus a rank? It must be, because you wouldn't say it's not his first name, is it? Well, I suppose it could be, but then I wouldn't say John Smith, would I? I'd go Captain Smith, General Smith, but I wouldn't go Arthur Smith. So if you're a secondary Cyberman and you're saying to your boss, Krang, you address him by his rank. So Ragus is a rank of cyberness, and he's Ragus Krang. So this is where the Doctor and co get split up. A word for Ben and Polly in this story. Ben and Polly have done sterling work, and they're relatively new, and they do come into this series and give it a real breath of fresh air. So it's such a shame that in 2 episodes' time their fate is sealed by the precociously bantery and professional and brilliant Fraser Hines, who's obviously a legend of the show, but it's just bad timing, isn't it, that he spells the end for them. But nice that Hartnell gets a lot to do. And I remember this in the book, the kind of the coldness that Polly is sort of shoved into the ship. And yes, we don't have the ship set in any of the existing episodes, but yeah, these seemed like scenes with their own atmosphere. And oh yes, Polly gets sort of shonked by sort of cyber unconsciousness, which is rather funky. It's a bit similar to what they do to General Cutler, isn't it? In episode 2, they don't do that really after this, do they? Do that thing where they put their hands on somebody's head and knock them out. It's another thing unique to these beautiful, wonderful 10th Planet Cybermen. Yes, and I think it's a bit weird, isn't it, when the Cybermen come in and the Doctor sort of goes, "Oh, you saved our lives," because that's not what they were doing, of course, was it? So it seems an odd thing to sort of say. Oh, you killed that man, but also you saved our lives. So now one of these the Gurn, who is played by Greg Palmer or Donald van der Marten, is voiced by Peter Hawkins, and he sounds a little bit different. And as has been mentioned, they are the voices are the closest, aren't they, to what synthesized voices would sound like. He's great. Hartnell is, he's imperious here, isn't he? And he realizes that the Cybermen are up to no good. So he does at least get a last sort of heroic throw of the dice, even though he doesn't do an awful lot in the last third of the story. But I was surprised, as I say, when I was watching this afternoon, that he gets much more to do than my memory of having done this for running through corridors suggested. What also struck me is that Dyson is a right moany git. Martin's choice of favourite thing from episode 3, Dudley Jones's Dyson, is a right old misery. And again, Ben gets to do the very heroic stuff here, which is fabulous. And that didn't somebody I had a correspondent who was not in the comments, so maybe it was a private comment, or maybe it was one from last week, saying that their favourite thing had been Ben saying, "You didn't leave me any choice, did you?" when he killed the Cyberman. This, I was always fascinated by this because there's a character called Haynes who is played by Freddie Eldred, who was a regular sort of non-speaking artist on television, and he gets killed in the book, and then I wasn't sure if he got killed or not, or wasn't sure because he wasn't mentioned in any cast lists or anything like that. So I thought, is he just an addition from the book? But no, he's not mentioned in any cast list because he's a non-speaking part. So he's mentioned in the supporting artists on the paperwork. But then for years I was under the impression that his death in the book was an addition, and that he survived in this, and that it was just Jerry Davis adding some drama to it. But then he definitely gets killed in the cartoon. So I had a look this afternoon in the camera script. I did a David Gillespie Pratt, and Haynes is there getting killed in the camera script. It's not there because I don't think it's mentioned in the Telesnap reconstruction, in the Telesnap a photo novel, because I don't think any photos cover it. So yes, I was always a bit murky on the fate of Haynes, but I've confirmed to myself today for sure, having originally thought he died and then thought maybe he didn't die. I've looked properly and closely today, and Haynes does get killed. Haynes, played by Freddie Eldred. So there we go. That's the death of Haynes is confirmed. The non-speaking, but of course nobody has a line going Haynes is dead, because he's a non-speaking artist, so he doesn't. There's that nobody bothers to mark his passing. This is the first in a line of things that the invincible Cybermen are susceptible to, and it's radiation. Soon it will be the weather and emotions and gold, but that's okay. I think it's quite fun if in every story they go, okay, what can defeat the Cybermen this time? I think if you set them up as invincible, it's it's a good starting point, but it would be boring if you couldn't find a weakness. And it's lovely that Ben is given the agency to discover this, and also to sort of G up these guest characters and get them to be heroic and go on the march, because, as we will discover, the plot, as much as it is that actually nobody need do anything bar stay alive, and the planet Mondas will fracture and melt. There's a lovely sort of cold atmosphere. And the Doctor has been shoved off into the cyber ship. So what? We're 12 minutes in. We're halfway through, and the Doctor is sort of tied up in a spaceship. But that's because he's done that heroic bit of telling Barclay and Ben, not to cooperate too much. And I do love the fact that he's got fingerless gloves. I love a fingerless glove. I have fingerless gloves myself. But I think a certain kind of old man can carry off fingerless gloves rather well, in the way that Hartnell can. I'm loving all of these cine clips. I'd forgotten there were quite so many of them. But I love the fact that Hartnell's Astrakhan hat bookends his era. I wonder if, because he hadn't worn it for ages and ages and ages, and then he's got it again in the War Machines, hasn't he? And here it is back for his final story, having not featured too much in his era. So that's a happy accident, I think, because one of the things we know for sure about the 60s is that things weren't really sort of planned, and lots of things were last minute expedients, and nobody went and pored over the old episodes. A costume designer would come in. So I wonder if he'd asked for it back or what. I wonder how that happened, because I don't think all of this stuff was planned in the same way that we now homage stuff left, right, and centre. One of the things I like about the 60s is that you get sort of one-off things, whether it be a titles like the way that the credits are rendered in this, or a piece of music. But then again, the piece of music that debuts here as the cyber music, Ragos Krang, that's it. Ragos Krang, says his mate Jarl, who's presumably, I don't know, Boff Jarl. I've just made up a cyber rank, the Boff. But Ragos, it's a shame. It's a vowel away from Regis. If he'd been called Regis Krang, I like the name Regis. It's quite a good name, isn't it? Regis Krang and Eugene Jarl. But I don't. But anyway, This music I always associate with the sort of coldness of the pole. But yes, the Martin Slavin's space adventure music becomes the cyber theme. So they must have had a list somewhere, or somebody must have remembered and gone, well, because the next time we use the Cybermen is the moon base, and it's a different director. But presumably all the sound guys must have had a sort of register and gone, oh well, yeah, last time it was these monsters, we used this music, so let's whop that in again. They're big. Nobody talks really about the cyber tray guns. I do quite like the cyber tray guns, but in the in the book, of course, their lamps look like they're powerful as well. And I think having the lamp as a weapon is a good use of this very big and bulky design. I have a regret that I'm seeing a picture now of it's the close up of one of the Cybermen. It's the close up of Krail. in profile, and Reg was rather taken. Reg Whitehead, when I visited him, was rather taken with that picture that I showed him, and I said I'd do him a print and send him a copy, and I forgot, and then I remembered far too late, and Reg is no longer with us. But I'm sure when he passed away, he wasn't thinking, if only Toby had sent me that picture. But anyway, he was a lovely man. Reg Whitehead, the inventor, no, not the inventor, but certainly a man who made some money because he'd been helping some actor friend. He'd been helping an actor friend, I think, move some gear or sell some gear. He helped a mate out in between jobs. And one of the things they spotted on these piles of things that were sort of surplus, I think, or whatever, was this executive toy, Newton's Cradle. And he went, oh, I quite like that. And he and his friend, I think, got the license to distribute it or sell it or whatever, and they hawked it around and made quite a lot of money, I think. I'd love to see these scenes of the Cybermen collapsing. I think what Reg has just whispered to one of them how much he's made out of this executive toy, and they've melted in shock. But yeah, so you see, this is why it's worth talking to everyone from Doctor Who, because Reg later became a horse breeder, and lived in a lovely place in sort of around about, it wasn't Newbury, that's where my nan was from, but round about there. No, maybe it was Newbury in Berkshire, and was a great man of horses, and had a very lovely home and a lovely wife, and he was a nice man, old Reg. I'm really, really pleased I got to spend some time with him, because he'd been a legendary name to me because he was the first Cyberman, and I thought he'd vanished. But he turned up and committed himself to interviews and all sorts of things, so we have him on the range. Not like David Doddermead, who was long gone, sadly, by the time we got round to interviewing people. Ditto Dudley Jones. I thought Dudley Jones had died a lot earlier than 1990, but I did check it. I did check it after killing him off last time. They're back, and they're getting more and more sing-song, aren't they? But this is a bit weird, because they sort of turn up and do their bit and sort of say, stop doing what you're doing, and then now Mondas melts. It looks quite rather a funky effect. It'll be a fairly simple melting effect, but Doctor Who's very good at making simple effects look really cool. The end of Mondas, and here comes Martin Slavin's music, and again we get Melty Cybermen. So I bet this will have been a bit cool and had a recording break. But I suspect Derek Martinez would have made this look good. That sort of shriveled cadaver looks pretty good, doesn't it? I mean, it will just be a sort of pile of the non-organic parts of the costume, but I have faith that Derek Martinez would have done a good job with that. So Terry Cutler comes back, all rather blasé, going, "Hey, everything's cool now." He's going to go, "You going to tell him his dad's dead? Are you going to tell him his dad went a bit loony and turned his performance up to 11 and was dead 3.5 minutes into the episode?" No. Let's get him back to Earth first. Where are the Doctor and Polly, Ben? Oh yes, so we don't even get a sort of proper goodbye. Everyone survives, though, at least. Barclay survives, Dyson survives, Wigner and his secretary survive, too. Steve Plytas. Faulty Towers. Kurt, he loves Manuel. And thank you, Dr. Barclay. I do like... David Doddermead has a lovely quality as an actor. So here we are in the cyber ship, and the Doctor's just sort of collapsed. The Doctor's taken no part in the drama. And this is, I think, a valid criticism, really, that the Doctor stops doing anything about halfway through. But also the fact that the whole plot hinges on the fact that the Cybermen are doomed before they've begun. But that has been nicely characterised by some correspondence, hasn't it? Saying, well, basically, it's just a race against time and keeping everybody alive while the inevitable happens, which is legitimate, I think, especially when there's so much going on. And let us pause to note this last piece of dialogue that we have captured of William Hartnell. It's practically his last words. It's far from being all over. And look, the way that he comes right close to the camera. Although his last words are here, but with that's pretty good of the Australian cine person who got his famous nearly last words. It's far from being all over. And his last words, stay warm. Oh, and he's giving it some welly, is Hartnell. He's obviously frail and knackered. Oh, and these days the regeneration would have started already. He'd have already been shot like 10 times. He'd have said a number of moving things. He'd have probably communicated with Stephen and Dodo and Ian and Barbara, and hovered over Susan's house. But here it's quite perfunctory. But yes, we didn't know we were making history. We were just trying to carry on with the show. So, it's in a way it's remarkable how unremarkable it is, but in another way it's entirely predictable. Nobody knows that they're making history. This was an expedient because of the nature of the leading man's relationship with the show, and I think the cine quality here really helps with this scene. I mean, again, it looks like it's beautifully filmed because of the way that the camera films Hartnell, the way that the TARDIS moves on its own, but also the way that it doesn't cut from picture to picture. It fades, which gives it a sort of elegiac sort of quality. And I wonder if we see Hartnell fall, because we don't have that. I suppose he must, but it seems so sort of quick, really. After that, the TARDIS and the lights are flashing. The kind of hits the deck and changes. There's no real sort of explanation, but it's amazingly done. It's very simple. The Doctor's face has changed, but it just kind of happens. No big speeches, no grandstanding, no real sort of all build up with it really either. It just kind of, whoop, there you go. It's quite extraordinary to see it in context. The audience must have been left going, what? Which explains why so much of the beginning of Power of the Daleks is taken up with a rather slow reveal of Patrick Troughton's character. He's mysterious about himself, but also we spend a lot of time in the TARDIS. So the Gurn, it's a great name, isn't it? Gurn. He's John Pertwee's favourite Cyberman. So there we are. That's the end of the 10th planet. I would like to see episode 4, just because, in a way, what appealed about the ambassadors of Adrian Bishop Baggett, it says about the ambassadors of death, was the fact that we can't, it's still slightly unknown to us, even though we have it all, but because of the quality. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and listen to the Happy Times and Places about the ambassadors of death, where much of what appealed to it was the fact that we're slightly removed from it because of the various problems with the picture and the fact that it's quite unknown. I do feel that a little bit about episode 4, although the recreation is excellent. Rafe Montague is the reconstructor of episode 4. Those cine clips, it's lovely to have them, but they're what we're used to now, but they don't look like they would have done. They're not good enough quality. They have that ghostly, they have that flickering line going up. The blacks are darker, and the picture is not as clear, which actually really helps, I think, with that regeneration scene. But it does mean that we might think we know it, but actually it would have been, if we do get it back, I think it will be a surprise. But I would like to see those last 3 or 4 minutes play out as they were supposed to, because we do have gaps in our knowledge of exactly what was going on. Hartnell's there at the TARDIS, and then he's on the floor. Do we see him fall? Well, actually, what does this? Well, I mean, let's not trust the camera script, but it's when in David Gillespie Pratt, we must, because David does so much of that, and he's found out lots of things about missing or bits that we don't know about. 10th Planet 4. I've even got the first draft without the regeneration, haven't I? It says, yes, the interior of the TARDIS, alternating with lights dimming, lightning throughout the scene until Ben and Polly emerge. During his battle, the Doctor says, no, I can't go through it. I can't. I will not give in, with terrible punctuation, but he doesn't do that, does he? So then he is overtaken by the invisible power and can talk no more. He is reduced to incoherent mutterings until he falls to the ground in a dead faint. With supreme effort, he reaches the door control with his right hand. He throws the door switch. In the background, we see the doors open and Ben and Polly appear behind the smoke. We see his hand grasping for the dematerializing control. With his last remaining strength, he throws a switch and collapses behind the control column. Ben and Polly edge in through the smoke. We see the Doctor from their point of view. He is lying by the control column, his head covered by his cloak. Polly, what's happened? I can't see anything. Ben sees the Doctor, reacts. Poll, look! The Doctor! Oh, Ben, his face, look at it. That's it. Medium close-up who, mix, medium close-up who. That's it. So, but the camera script is never the whole story, as we know. 10th Planet 4, first draft, though. What do we have here? I have looked at all this stuff, but not in such a long time. Oh no, that's some design drawings. I've got all sorts of lovely things on my computer. So what do we have here? Will the Earth go back to normal now? Doctor Who says, yes, child. The returning energy will produce some severe storms. High winds, but not for long. High something, but not for long. Thank heavens, says Polly. Not nice to think of it all ending in 1982. Ben says, I want to get back to good old 1966. Come on, Doctor. They turn to go. Barclay, you're not leaving. The planes will be here soon. I'm sure Secretary Wigner will have a post for you when he learns of your efforts today. Ben says, thanks, but I got a job already. Doctor Who says, we must be on our way. Goodbye. Polly says, goodbye. Dyson goes to stop them. Barclay halts them. Look at the monitor. Telecity. The TARDIS is now almost covered with snow. We hear the TARDIS dematerializing sounds. It dematerializes. That's a bit confusing. Barclay, turning to Dyson. If the Cybermen came from Mondas, just where did they come from? Oh, okay. Well, there we go. So I think the inference there is that they got to the TARDIS almost as quickly as the Cybermen got to the base. Ha 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 ha. How fun! Well, there we go. That's. I will obviously go into that script in more detail in too much information, but isn't it lovely that we have those things? So I have to choose two favourite things about the 10th Planet, Part 4. Well, the first one, of course, is going to be. So, well, one favourite thing about the 10th Planet Part 4 and one overall favourite thing. Well, I'm going to choose the regeneration. Of course I am. I love the fact that it happens silently and that, you know, even though in the script it seems a little perfunctory, it's just like the Doctor's a bit knackered and off he goes and collapses and he doesn't even have any dialogue sort of alluding to exactly what's going on. It's all hints, you know. The director, Derek Martinez, makes the most of it. He makes us feel like something strange and important is happening. And we kind of need that in retrospect. It needs more than is there on paper, I think. And the sort of ghostly, you know, the flickering lights, although they are in the script, and the TARDIS controls moving on their own, and those sound effects, and the way he films Hartnell, and particularly, I think, the fact that the vision mixer chooses to... Shirley Coward is the vision mixer. Let us give credit to that important name who appeared on credits of so many Doctor Who's, you know, fading between one and the other. It really does give it a feel beyond what we might expect, considering, as we say, we didn't know this was going to be the first of many, and that we'd be talking about it 60-odd years later. But also what regeneration represents, the fact that, you know, it secured the future of the show, and it makes the show have this unique element that the character remains, but different brilliant actors are come and give their twist on the character, so long as the sense of a witty, intelligent moral crusader who prefers not to use violence if possible, but then each individual actor can come and throw their weight behind it, either by doing a character, as some actors play the Doctor as a character, and some who bring themselves to the party and do the leading man thing, and that depends on the style of actor hired, and both are legitimate ways of playing the part. Using your own accent and being as close to yourself as possible, or adopting a persona and making that your characterization of the Doctor. And it is in a way, it's actor proof in that sense, in that it doesn't suit one style of actor more than the other. It's sad for Hartnell, isn't it, that he turned out not to be indispensable, but the show wouldn't have lasted and made the impact that it did without him. But well done, Patrick Troughton, coming in. But well done for the idea of regeneration. And isn't it weird that we have this episode that is the one episode that's missing, and it's the important climactic episode that has the landmark moment in, but because of the way the Doctor Who works, we actually have not only the regeneration, which is what I saw first, the Blue Peter clip. We've got that. In fact, I saw it in Who's Doctor Who. So I don't think I even saw the whole thing, because I don't think you have the bit of Ben and Polly in that. So I saw the regeneration, just the close up. Then I saw the extra tiny little bit extra with Ben and Polly, and then the Cine clip comes back where they've filmed the regeneration too, but they've got the build up, and that is a real eye opener, because I'd only seen the regeneration itself, and that you have this sort of mysterious, weird bit beforehand, which I think is actually the making of it, as much as the effect that transmogrifies Hartnell into Troughton. That really weird, strange, offbeat. It's Doctor Who in the 60s being peculiar again, which gives it an edge, and it makes it seem like something sort of mysterious and magical is happening, which is beautifully, strangely 60s Doctor Who. So it's not just the regeneration; it's the fact that it's in an episode that's missing, but then we've got bits of it that we've pieced together from different sources. Let alone the fact that we also have the soundtrack. And so we have it, aren't we lucky? But we don't have it, aren't we unlucky? It's been pieced together so we can see it, except it's been pieced together out of imperfect materials, so we don't quite have the completely accurate picture. And it literally is a sort of mosaic. It's a piece of archaeology where we've sort of glued the bits back together, but it means that we have a vessel which sort of looks like it would have done, but doesn't quite. But you shouldn't be trusted to hold water. It encapsulates all that is everything about being a Doctor Who fan and loving Doctor Who, and it happens at a key moment in the show's history, the very first regeneration, and talking about it and seeing it in context. It does make me warm more to the idea that 10th Planet 4 is an important episode to return. I mean, I'll just take them all, folks. So I am choosing the regeneration. And for my overall thing, because, I would have chosen the Cybermen. I love that cyber design, and I love the voices, and I love the Cybermen full stop, but I love the fact that their first iteration is this, really... very, very quickly abandoned look, and yet it has charms all of its own. And the fact that they then came back all those years later, with me having for years thought, well, they'd never do them like that now. And that's what we all thought. We thought, well, yeah, the first ones were a mistake. They're too big, they're too bulky. You'd never make them like that these days. And then they did all that time in the future, and they really worked. So it's a wonderful design. I think there's a wonderful story behind the backstory behind them, where they go, well, let's do them differently, and we all consign them to the rubbish bin of history, and then actually that design turns up all those years later and turns out to be effective and steampunky and retro and really works. And as well as the voices, which have been much discussed here. So I would have chosen the original Cybermen, but I played the game badly, and Martin, of course, got in with those much earlier, which is what I should have done. So let's go away from history. Let's and I'd love to maybe choose Ben and Polly, because I think they really shine here and they show their worth as companions. And I think Michael Craze and Annika Wills are brilliant. I love what they do to the show when they come into it. I love the fact that they're game and they take control and they're really capable, and they're both very good at their jobs. You know, they fill the parts very, very well. And I think the script writers feed them into the scripts very nicely, and they're capable of taking on the bulk of the action. So big up Ben and Polly, who I think are a favourite companion duo of mine. And I'd love to choose Hartnell because it's his last story and he's marvellous. Should I choose Hartnell? I kind of have chosen Hartnell though, haven't I? I chose him for episode 2, so I can't really choose him. I chose him for episode 2 sort of going, it's his last hurrah with the Love, Pride, Hate, Fear, but he gets his entrance this time around as a guy coming and going, I'm back from my holiday and I'm going to make this count. Because not from my holiday, from my illness. I'm better. I've had a week off. I've been fishing. I'm fine. And so he does. It's nice that in that last episode he gets to enter and go, right, this is my last hurrah. Even if the script then, sidelines him about halfway through. But anyway, he does get plenty of hero moments in episode 4, more so than I'd remembered. So I'm pleased about that. That the Doctor does get a good stab of the action in episode 4, but I can't choose that as my favourite thing, that I was wrong about something. So what I will choose as my overall thing, I'm going to put history to one side, put the Cybermen to one side, put Hartnell to one side, and I'm going to choose base. I'm going to throw 10th Planet under the bus because I'm going to choose Base Under Siege. This is the first flowering of a type of Doctor Who story that I think rightly, when we come to season 5, gets gypped for being a bit repetitive. And yet it is a style of Doctor Who story that I love. Throw a group of characters together in a small setting, have them besieged by some exciting monsters, and have them killed off one by one. You get better, although Dyson and Barclay are great, particularly Barclay. These stories work better when they're like the Christmas films that I used to watch, The Towering Inferno, The Poseidon Adventure. Again, groups of characters in a dangerous situation, and you have to guess who's going to die next and how they're going to die, and you're worried anybody could die at any moment. And when characters die who surprise you that they've died, that's how you get in touch with your emotions and your shock and all of that sort of thing. And stories are told through character. So when these characters are well drawn, you're unable to tell individual stories because of the nature of the situation. The heightened situation and the small surface area that they're in means that you concentrate on the characters, and the characters are played by actors, and it means that good actors get a chance to make an impact playing these characters in these situations. So Base Under Siege is my perfect Doctor Who, and they were the target books that really, really appealed to me, and I read those target books, and 10th Planet was an early target book for me, and it seemed to me that all Doctor Who stories were a bit like this, and it was no bad thing. And yes, I totally understand that it's quite a restrictive formula, and it's one that is repetitive and not very imaginatively deployed sometimes. And yet, despite that, I love it, and I'm a sucker when they come to do it later in the series, like The Impossible Planet and The Satan Pit and Under the Lake and Before the Flood. Those stories, hugely appeal to me because they're doing what I like Doctor Who to do, which is throw a load of characters together and have them nobbled off one by one. So to me, Base Under Siege is a bit like the 10th Planet. It's something that I know has its flaws, and yet it presses my particular buttons to the extent that I don't care about those flaws. I can overlook them because, I thought I'd talk much more in the 10th Planet about the huge shortcomings of the script, really, in terms of how it's plotted. It's the plot is really needs another go, but actually you don't notice, you don't care, because the story is done with such conviction, and it does, it's decided not to be fantastical. It's decided to be realistic and sweaty and gritty and exciting, and so you're pulled along. You're pulled along with the drama, so that you don't necessarily worry too much about what's happening with the plot. And I think that's great televisual sleight of hand, smoke and mirrors, whatever you want to call it. And Base Under Siege is not the most imaginative storytelling device, but it absolutely does the job, and it does I can happily wallow in that sort of stuff, and all of its tropes absolutely press every single one of my buttons. And for me, it is a welcome addition to the pantheon of Doctor Who storytelling, even though I'm aware it also at the same time makes Doctor Who a little bit less imaginative than it can sometimes be. Don't care, personal taste, love it. Right, what does Martin say about his favourite things, his favourite thing about episode 4 and his bonus thing? So here we go. 10th Planet.
Episode 4. That most significant moment in Doctor Who history, and one that managed to get itself lost, despite the other 3 surviving their journey across the years. There's a lot to enjoy in the animated version, of course, but I think that my favourite moment is most likely to be easily guessed, because it's the regeneration. Of course it is. Or perhaps it's more the idea that the regeneration only survives because it was in Blue Peter. Yeah, I think that's it. I think even though I wish they'd kept a few more minutes of it. Although obviously there's also some suggestion that the rest is lost because of Blue Peter too. Billy is back for his farewell episode, and his enigmatic suggestions of things to come are a delight, as is his properly doctory final chance to shine, as he takes over control of Snowcap Base and warns of the suitably huge threat, yes, the huge threat to the entire world that the Cybermen are plotting. The brief double act he seems to form alongside Polly, who's in full-on anxious yet lovable Polly mode throughout, is also a lot of fun. Robert Beatty as Cutler gets to go wonderfully over the top, which has been brewing for a couple of episodes, and Ben's Mandos Billy Fluff is a nice touch. But yeah, I still think it's the very Blue Peter-ness of the regeneration survival that still feels like the best thing ever.
Well, I mean, yes, so I got the regeneration. And I sort of, we were both along the same lines as well. The fact that it's sort of been pieced together. So we got both. I mean, if it was possible to score 2 for 1 point, I'd have done it then. But it isn't possible, so I don't. But I'm going to enjoy the sweet taste of victory, and let's see if that now regenerates into defeat when Martin chooses his bonus thing, which I suspect won't be Base Under Siege. Let's see.
Right, my bonus favourite thing that I most love about the 10th Planet is the sheer number of huge Doctor Who ideas that drive this 4-parter. It's probably entirely predictable, of course, that this model for much of what makes the Patrick Troughton era so memorable is a favourite, as are the Cybermen themselves as they step swiftly into their favourite monsters role. But it is, of course, that last 5 minutes and the idea of the regeneration that is so wonderful and enabled the series to move on beyond its star in a very creative and future-proofing way, and made all of the future longevity of the series possible, and something that still drives the series and excites the viewers to this day. It's far from being over.
And it is a landmark story, and what's fascinating about it is that it doesn't feel much like the stories that have gone before, with the possible exception, I'd say, of the War Machines. But it does feel like it's looking to the future, and often ends of era are consolidating what has gone before. But this seems to almost be like, this is where we are now, and there's no room for you in it, fuddy-duddy old. Doctor Who mystical fairy tale Doctor Who old man type. We need somebody to take this in a different direction. Even though the whole way that Troughton's Doctor works is that he is a sort of impish counterpoint to the sort of hard-nosed militarism or technological prowess of the bases that he finds himself stuck in. Anyway, it's fascinating to see Doctor Who's history unfold, and I suspect you wouldn't have chosen it to be this way with the benefit of hindsight. So the fact that it is this way makes it all the more sort of special and magical and alchemic and all sorts of other reasons that Doctor Who's series of happy accidents makes it so endlessly fascinating. Because if you planned it, it wouldn't be the way that it is, and that's the rather wonderful thing about Doctor Who. Is that Hartnell's penultimate story is The Smugglers. I mean, it seems so strange now. And here we are, the 10th Planet is his last, which has the first appearance of the Cybermen, the first regeneration, but feels, feels as different as it does, and yet, by season 5 will be very familiar. But anyway, do I get a point for that? Don't think I do. It doesn't matter. I've lost anyway. But there is more. There is more from Martin. So let's hear what he's got to say.
So there you are then, Toby. I hope you enjoyed my blindingly obvious insights into the televisual delight that was the 10th Planet. I'm sure you found far more insightful and interesting things to say about it than I did, but as pivotal turning points in Doctor Who go, it's not a bad one, despite some of the stick it sometimes seems to get. And the First Doctor is a lot less troubling in this than is suggested in Twice Upon a Time, I think. Anyway, I don't really have that much I can tell you other than to mention that your listeners can hear me most Sunday evenings at 7 p.m. on the internet radio station Fab Radio International for my show Vision on Sound, in which we try to discuss archive television and all sorts of matters related to that, which is also available as a podcast via anchor.fm. And if you want to take part in that show, feel free to contact me via @VisionOnSound1 on Twitter. You can also find me once a month on the podcast An A to Z of UK TV drama, which I do alongside Andy Priestner. And I also pop up from time to time, nattering about old TV shows, music and films on Lisa and Andrew's Round the Archives podcast, Warren Cummings' Cinematic Sausage, and Paul Chandler, the Shy Yeti's Shy Life podcast. Such a media whore, I'll turn up on a podcast for anyone who'll ask me, really. And whilst I'm terribly bad at being pushy, there are inevitably a couple of books collecting together some of the writing and artwork I did for Round the Archives, available via Lulu if you type in Martin A.W. Holmes, as well as my children's book of Nosferatu 2 the Dancer, the last of which is part of my spectacularly unimpressive attempts to build myself a career as an artist and illustrator over this past few years. Finally, give my pal Gruntley, @OgronThe on Twitter, a follow, and I've never met the lovely guy who acts as his Earth agent, but he's always been very supportive and kind about the various cartoons and other scribbles I've done in response to his humour for several years now, and he's rather brilliant. So that's all from me. I hope you enjoyed my contributions. Many, many thanks, Toby, for asking me to join you on your show today. Goodbye for now, and take care.
I really like Martin. He's such a beacon of enthusiasm, and he is. You can see it in his hands and in his. It's like the David Bellamy of TV fandom. He wants to get right in there and really enjoy it, and he just exudes goodness and enthusiasm, and is one of those lovely people. And since he recorded that, Blue Sky has become a thing. So he mentioned Gruntley on Twitter/X, but Gruntley T Ogron is on Blue Sky. So find him there, and do check out some of Martin's, or all of, if you can. But certainly give yourself a taste of some of his other output. I've spent a lot of time in the garden with the A to Z of television drama, and sometimes about stories that I've programs that I've either not seen or haven't seen since they were on. But Andy and Martin have always got very interesting perspectives, and sometimes it's nice to have a break from people talking about Doctor Who to listen to them talk instead about the XYY Man or Ord Wingate. So there we go. Martin, thank you so much. And the response to this one on the Patreon, and I think largely because everyone's so chuffed to see Martin contributing to this, has been great. And I like the fact that 10th Planet, which has gone out of fashion, I think, in recent years, is a story that still has a place in the hearts of so many. It's a story that makes me feel warm and fuzzy, just because, I remember having, being on, I was going to say a campsite. We didn't have campsites. It was a hill I was dragged along to a cub camp. I was never a member of Cubs, but my mum was in charge of them, so I went when I was too young. I was just dragged along, really. I had to go where everybody else was because there was nobody else to have me, and I took the 10th Planet to cub camp with its battered, slightly expanded spine. As I say, I thought it was a slightly bigger book because it seemed more important. It's not. It's the same size as every other one, but ours seemed slightly bigger. So almost like it expanded to fill its legendary status. Maybe it had got a bit wet or something, and that's what had done it. But that was before I'd got to it. But and I still have that copy that was taken and battered and probably not looked after enough on that Cub Cup. I've also got a more recent and a smarter edition as well. Just in order that I've got a copy that isn't battered and bent and torn like our original is, which it is. But that's a sign that it's been well loved, and well loved is what the 10th Planet is. So, well, I mean, this edition is far from being all over in the sense that I always blather along post credits, but we're pretty much all over as it comes to the end of the 10th Planet. As I record this, the weather is as inclement as it's possible to be. It's so inclement, it's been swallowed by Mr. Freud. Although, no, we can't talk about him anymore, is he? He was a wrong 'un. But he's the only Clement I know. Oh, no, Attlee. Yes, it's been swallowed by Mr. Attlee. That's how inclement it is. But the wind is battering. The rain has been pouring. It's chilly outside. So, as the First Doctor would say, keep warm, and happy times and places to you all. Thanks very much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Haydock, and my special guest, Martin Holmes, who, as well as everything you heard him say just now, is also on Blue Sky, Martin A.W. Holmes, which is at hwam.bsky.social. I'm grateful to Martin and also to the patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include Ruben Herfindahl, Chris Hyam, Ian Key, Ashley Knight, Joe Llewellyn, Ian K. McLachlan, Philip Marsh, Nathan Martin, Roland Moore, Rick Moran, Kevin Murdoch, Graham Knott, Adam Parker, Barry Platt, Risto Matti Cirillo, Frank Shales, Peter Burns, James Curray-Smith, Peter Harness, Ronald Hayden, Rob Leonard, Christopher Meredith, Gavin McLean, Stephen Moffat, Richard Straw, Neil Tate, Nick Tedston, David Gates, Mark Wright, and Darcy Smart. The music is by Dave Gates, the artwork by Dylan Patterson. If you would like your name to be on the credits, then go to patreon.com/Toby Haydock and sign up for as little as £3 a month. You get advance releases, you get bonus material, you get monthly AMAs where you get to, as the legend says, ask me anything and I will answer. And you get behind-the-scenes looks at my DVD and Blu-ray output. You get some bits of comedy, and you get sometimes exclusive interviews. And I've started putting out there the unedited versions of my Who's Round interviews with a bit of an entry and an exit to give some context and a few thoughts and observations about the continuation or otherwise of my contact and relationship with the person interviewed. So, yeah, there's a sort of repackaging thing going on there. It was something I'd initially decided to do because it would be easy to do. I could just get the files and whack them out there. But instead, I've made sure I listen to them to make sure that they're all right, and then I've recorded extra. Basically, I've made it take longer than it needs to. I make everything take longer than it needs to, hence me still talking right now. So patreon.com/Toby Haydock. You can also support at Ko-fi, Ko-fi, Ko-fi.com/Toby Haydock, which is a way of avoiding a monthly commitment, but rewarding me if you like a particular episode or just occasionally want to do the equivalent of throwing a few coins into my hat as you pass me on the underground. And that the other way of supporting me is not financial at all, and that is great. Equally welcome if you can like, subscribe, thumbs up, 5-star, and a few lines of review any and each and all of these podcasts wherever you find them, and spread the word via your mouths as well. Just tell people about these things, because the more people know and the more people listen, the more worthwhile it is for me to do them. But mostly I'm grateful to you, and I'm grateful to everybody that gets in touch as well. I'm on all the social media, like Martin. I have joined the Blue Sky Revolution. I'm still on Twitter as well. I'm very needy. And I also have a Facebook page and a YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, where these are now uploaded automatically as well, and where my annual in memoriams go. And I'm going to start putting other things there as well, if I possibly can. And I'm on Instagram at Toby.Haydock. So do all of that stuff. So there we go. That's the end of that. I'm currently in the throes of doing my annual, in memoriam end of the year, looking back, which seems appropriate for the 10th Planet 4, which itself marks the end of an era, second story into the run. That's weird, isn't it? I know it's the first of the production block of Bloody Bell, but it just does seem weird now. You'd think it would be a major sort of build-up. No, it's stuck on after the pirate story, 8 weeks, and Hartnell goes 8 weeks into the season. Really weird. And with a month to go for Christmas. So round about... a couple of months, isn't it? A couple of months to go before Christmas. It was November. So, October, November. Anyway, so by this time, when I'm recording this in December, I'm recording this on the 8th of December. Actually, I don't normally say the date, but it's the 8th of December, 2024. So, actually, as we've stuck out to the bitter end, I'm doing this as I mark. I should be having a party. The fact that I haven't had an alcoholic drink for 6 years as of today. In some cases, that seems like time has flown. In other cases, it seems like yesterday. I'm not sure I have an angle on it, but yes, that in its way seems sort of weird to consider. Sort of a bit like 10th Planet 4. It's a sort of landmark, but yet it doesn't feel like that in many ways, because nothing really has a sense. I don't feel a sense of anything. I only know this because we have calendars and we have dates and we mark our lives by trying to find things significant in the fact that numerically and we have patterns, I suppose. No, dates are also decided by movements around the sun and all that sort of thing as well, I suppose. But we still impose our particular ways, aren't they? Our numerical system and our names of months and things like that are peculiar to us. But nonetheless, whether we're seeing patterns in things that aren't there or not, 6 years ago today I had my last alcoholic drink. So hopefully my sobriety is far from being all over. And I suppose I did emerge a new man. Not as exciting a one, I don't think. Was I exciting? I suspect I was probably... No, I know I've been in the company of drunk people as a sober man. I suspect I wasn't very exciting. I suspect I was very boring indeed. But I'm very boring now. But which is why I have to pour my energies into something else. Instead of pour me another drink, I pour myself into talking about Doctor Who and deep diving into Doctor Who and not going out, and instead reaching out from my little cupboard here, because I find that a bit easier. So I'm indoors a lot more. So yes, I've shut myself in my little cupboard, and oh look, the controls are working all by themselves. Ha 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 ha. So anyway, well look, if any of you are still listening, that's just me showing off. I'm 6 years sober. Hurrah. And and I suppose if you're somebody for whom that chimes, if I can do it, you can. I wrote a blog this time last year on my website, tobyhaydock.com, that's called 5 Years Sober. A lot of people have very touchingly said it helped them, which surprised me. I just thought, again, it's sort of showing off, really, isn't it? It's just attention seeking, and alkies are attention seekers, so are performers, trying to get our approval from other people, using either performance or a social lubricant. It's yes, it's all part of it, and I was quite hard on myself in that post from last year, but people found it quite useful. So maybe a bit of tough love, maybe a bit of honesty about the whole process. But so yeah, if that chimes with you or a loved one, go and check that out. Well, who'd have thought that instead of talking about the 10th Planet Part 4, I was talking about that. But there we go. I suppose, as I say, it is slightly appropriate because it's about becoming a new man, or just less of a stupid one.